Hello everybody! Welcome to another Sunday Funday, and yes, I know it's non-Sunday. It's just thanks to how these movies are coming out and everything, and the time I get to see them, it kind of pretty much makes it to where I'm not seeing them consistently on Sunday. And not only that, but some of these movies I'm waiting to sit on for a little bit, not because they're particularly like the worst thing ever, not to give away some of the ideas of what I'm going to say about this film that you can already read below of what I'm going to review. But more importantly, I'm waiting to let them marinate. Because again, I'm trying to figure out, it's like, okay, what is making these direct to perma streaming movies, what's these direct to DVD movies, what's making them feel so much worse in my eyes compared to, say, like bigger blockbuster films, or even just movies that are being released in theaters, actually. Because today I am here to talk about, of course, John Henry.
Feel the vibe, I feel the vibe. Extra
Kill
live, extra live. The man woke up superhuman.
You should know I'm not done.
Now, to real quickly give a synopsis, sort of, John Henry, it stars Terry Crews as the titled character, John Henry. He is a guy who used to have a past with this one LA gang. I think they're just called the Crosses or something like that. I don't know. But he used to be part of them because his cousin, whose name is Hell, it's a lot on the nose here at times. I'm going to get into this movie in a second after I go over its plot very fast. But he used to be part of them, and it ends up that at one point these two people from Honduras, they got rescued by, or they kidnapped this one girl from Honduras to try and explain it to make any sense. The movie doesn't, I'll get into it, but the movie doesn't make a lot of sense. But they are rescuing this one of their sisters from Honduras. These two guys. They're Hispanic and all that, because I guess we need to have the other racial stereotypes be thrown around. Not as bad. Gotta get into it. They rescue her, and then they end up hiding near John Henry. He takes them in and ends up having to help fight against this gang, even though he swore off violence and death and yada yada yada. Oh god, this movie. First off, the idea of a Good Samaritan, or even a guy who happens to be connected tangentially or directly with a gang or cartel or anything like that, and helping out these people, and then end up having to take up arms to help those who are innocent and free and whatever. It's such a cliched story. You've seen it before. You've heard it before. It's been done a dozen times before. And that's one of the issues right then and there, is like, this is nothing new. There's no new ground being treaded here. The only thing that is different, technically, is simply in how this movie decides to shoot itself, and how it decides to try and use some of its imagery and its music, for lack of a better way to put it. It's actually more of its score, because there are sometimes it does have legitimate like music, but a lot of it's just actual, just like sounds and whatnot. Now, very obviously, with the idea of calling him John Henry, to talk about the symbolism that is obviously there, because the director is not exactly the most tactful person in the world, but to be fair, this is his first attempt, I'll give him that. But this is an attempt to try and be pretty much, it's an African-American Western. It is meant to be a Western set in the modern era, revolves around a folk hero, John Henry. John Henry is a folk hero for, African Americans. And hey, that's not a bad idea. I'm not a big Western fan, I'll fully admit that. I think they're usually pretty dry, and they're kind of too simple a lot of times. Or they're just a lot of talking and very little, if anything, happening. But it's a genuine idea that he's trying to get across. I mean, obviously there is spaghetti western tunes here or there, so it's obvious that it's trying to draw from all sorts of different westerns. And obviously it does have a lot more to do with, better way to say it, black culture, beyond the fact obviously there's hip hop. Most of the cast is black, short of 3 Hispanic people. Of course, like I said, the 2 people from Honduras and their one brother who happens to be here in America. It's like, okay, that's, it's fine to have the spaghetti western tune. Some people might say it's a little archaic, I guess is the way you can think of it. But I think it fits for black culture because a lot of black people grew up on spaghetti westerns and also grew up on kickboxing movies, or best way to think of it is Chinese action films. I realize I'm really off-centered here. And I don't mind that they're trying to homage that, especially with some of the music and some of the score choices. That's fine. I don't mind that. That's actually a unique idea. The execution is terrible, though. And that is where the entire movie, its problem is. Like, the whole idea behind it, to be a modern day black-aimed western. That's actually a really noble goal. That's a very interesting idea. And sure, it's got a basic premise. But to be fair, a lot of westerns, when you break them down, have very basic premises. That's not the worst thing in the world for it, just simply have a basic premise. I like some other movies that have basic premises. The problem is the movie's really, really, really fucking bad. First off, the acting is all around terrible. Ludacris is probably the main villain of the entire film, named Hell, who we don't see till over halfway through the film. He's arguably the best actor out of all of them, and even then there's a lot of times he kind of feels a little bored at times. Terry Crews's acting just constantly shifts from being a bit too over the top and a bit too subdued, and like sometimes he's not really sure what he's exactly supposed to do. Probably does not help that he's having to work with a first-time director, and director himself may not be 100% certain what they wish to do. And I will give them this much. Obviously, a lot of this movie is being shot in a few locations. It's very sparse. But unlike, for instance, the 2 Into the Dark films I've already reviewed, they don't let that be a deterrent to its budget. Or the fact they have no budget, they don't let that be as big of a deterrent as the Into the Dark films do. Just the problem here is constantly it's obvious that they didn't have much in the way of a budget, so they had to include a lot more talking. There's a lot of scenes where shit is just being said to us and nothing is actually happening. And I don't mean like exposition. It's like I do have my own issues with just exposition dumps, just for hours on end, just words vomiting right out of their mouth. I get tired of that really fast. And I have so little patience for it. Here the issue is there is a lot of not exposition, and it's what I guess you can call from the late 90s Tarantinoing. It's a thing that M. Night Shyamalan likes to indulge in. He's not as bad about it anymore. He still does indulge in it every now and then. But it's where people just kind of talk. It's just this empty just noise and all this. It's just filling the air. It's because we can't have a scene where, we're having a character contemplate something or anything like that. No, instead, we have to have noise. We just have to have this almost like white noise of just people talking. It doesn't have a bearing upon the story. It doesn't have a bearing upon the characters very well. Like, the most I learn is that Terry Crews is John Henry's dad. His name is BJ, I believe, or something like that, but he likes pussy, and he makes a big deal that he fucked a lot of women. Yay. It didn't particularly make him endearing, not for me. And not only that, but it would have been something if they gave him some jokes, gave him something funny to say. Not because he has to be the funny guy, but obviously that was the idea, was he was supposed to be humorous. But a lot of what he said wasn't. Like, there was a few times I kind of at it, and that's the best I got. It's like, okay, that's sort of slightly comical. But it's worse and more dry than some of my videos can be. Yeah, God. And the other issue, again, it just deals with there is supposedly like another character who comes up and she's in 2 entire scenes. And that is a lady who John Henry happens to know from high school. But it's like, oh, well, we used to know each other. I used to party. I know you used to party. I'm not as big into partying anymore. You know, and it's supposed to be like they have kind of a thing, I guess, because suddenly she just shows up at his house at one point after these 2 kids get kidnapped, and then just happens to be like, oh, you shouldn't get involved in. And it's like, wait, this character has barely been in this movie, and as far as we know, just from what we have seen, she's been in 2 scenes, and one of them establishes that they haven't talked to each other since high school. And John Henry's supposed to be in his 40s. Obviously. If not, yeah, it has to be 40s because they said like 20 years ago from high school. So we'll say 40s. 38 at the youngest. That's a problem right there. We can't have this establishment that these 2 characters have not really talked, don't communicate to each other, and then all of a sudden she's willing to come pick up these kids, as he says, and just kind of just rolls with it. The fuck? There's also at one point, like, John Henry gets shot in the head and just kind of walks it off. And it's just like a minor inconvenience to him. It's like, it would be one thing if they like shot him through the face or something like that, and you know, and he had like to patch up his face, and you know, he's just pretty much bleeding out from it because he's not properly treating it. That would be something, but he gets shot right in the top of the head. I don't care how hard your damn head is, it's gonna kill you after a bit. In fact, that's another issue throughout the entire movie, because it is very much obviously trying to be a Western, and it's spoiled the movie. The hero fucking dies and just bites it because he gets shot twice. And both times it looks like he is shot in the side. It's like, okay, I know there can be some important stuff over here, but it looks like they just kind of shoot him here. It'd be one thing like if they shot him like a little bit lower and maybe like near his stomach area, where he will die, but he's going to slowly die. But instead, he kind of gets shot on the side, and like I think one kind of like hits his shoulder or like near his leg or something. It's like, is this the lethal death wound? Is that his weak point? And they make a big deal about this. It's like, I barely know who John Henry is. Like, we keep pointing a flashback to how he was as he was younger. And I will give the 2 actors who play Hell, I still don't like that name, so on the nose, it came. I don't, the only way it could be more on the nose is if it was an actual booger. But Hell in John Henry's younger selves, I actually liked the actors. I thought, it's like, okay, hey, they're kind of good. It's like, I kind of wish I was just watching their movie instead of this other thing, which is watching how their relationship ends by them both technically dying. Oh, surprise, surprise, Hell dies at the end. What to do, Basil? But whenever whenever we're flashing back constantly, it's supposed to kind of give us some kind of context to certain things, but some of it really doesn't fit and doesn't make as much sense as it really should. Like, it's supposed to show, hey, John has problems dealing with killing people. Well, he killed one guy, technically, and then he got all shook up. Okay, that's fine. But how they act in reference of him, and also kind of fearful almost at times, it seems like it should have been he was with the gang a little bit longer. And not only that, but some of the stuff just doesn't work. Like, some of the scenes that they show from these flashbacks, like, they're kind of like playing, I think, dominoes and kind of like talking shit to each other. It's just expletive, dumps. And I don't mean exposition. I mean, just, it's like, here, let's throw as many fucks as we can in one string of sentences. Like, alright, cool. And because of But when we see that, they're like playing with guns, but then at one point it's like, okay, it's supposed to be the first guy that John killed or beat up or anything like that, and accidentally they kill the guy. It's like, oh yeah, and I was scared of guns. Like, wait, when did that other scene happen then? Because they don't seem to mesh. And only that, but it doesn't seem to work. It's like, okay, so he was scared of guns, didn't use a gun, but killed a guy by stomping on his head, and all of that, but it's a really, really bad looking scene. Because like it's supposed to be this like CCTV footage. And instead of, like, obviously, like, they use a dummy or have like a quick like little cut or something and obviously step on a mannequin's head and it squishes out. It's just where you can obviously see his foot stomps next to the guy and then a CGI like thing comes out. It looks really bad. It's like, wow, y'all spent all 2 seconds to do that scene. You're like, here, let's just do this. It's like, we can't figure out a way to make it look decent because we're shitty people. We don't know how to produce something. But it's like, okay, some of this, in terms of timeline, it's not fitting. It's beyond just taking the square peg and trying to shove it through the circle cue or circle spot. It's like trying to take the square peg and shove it up your own ass to get it to fit into the circle. It's like this is so, and all of that. But it would be one thing if it very, kind of transitions into it. But it's a real jarring kind of cut into it. Like suddenly, like we're watching him kind of like, oh, I'm walking towards this high school in Compton, and hard cut over into his other scene. It's like, fuck just happened here? Does this just shift over to something else? And then we get that constantly, and not only that, but there's supposedly this thing where he has a camera. It's like a camcorder, actually. Just a, hey kiddies, just to let you know, they used to record these things on tapes instead of on little USB drives, or actually memory drives and all that. I don't know what I'm talking about. SD cards. Thank God they do that now. I could not imagine doing this all on just fucking film. But like they constantly show like him flashing back and him recording and talking to people. It's like, why? This doesn't have a purpose for this to be here. It's just there so that way we can provide some sense of backstory. But why is it supposedly be in the 90s? It's shot on a camcorder. What? How does fit? Why does this need to be this way? Why not just show it shot on film and not make it like, oh, this is being shot on a camcorder. This is just people, just talking. This is them younger, to show them kind of growing up. And not only that, but because it's in between bits of the movie, it's like between different parts of the main plot, it constantly makes the plot come to a screeching halt. And we gotta get this little bit to kind of explain this thing, and then we gotta move fucking forward again. It constantly fights against itself. That's one of the worst things about the entire film, is it's constantly at odds with what it actually really wants to do. There is way too much filler for an hour and a half long movie. Like, it's weird that like the first major scene beyond, like, it begins with like, it shows like a dog, and then it's having the song John Henry, where they kind of sing about John Henry, not just the actor, but also the folklore hero and all that. When they're singing about that, and then it's like shows his dog, and it gets hit, and this guy's threatening John Henry, like, yeah, I'm being a punk. And then John Henry just kind of walks off from him, and it's supposed to be, it's like, okay, well, it's trying to show his like bad attitude, and just, it's like, you figure, okay, well, that's going to be part of the straw, and that's what's going to help him to try and move forward. No, he just kind of just is sad. Okay. That's random, and kind of does not need to be in the film. It doesn't add anything to the movie. It doesn't really set up anything, except for a light kind of thing. It's like, oh, here's the reason why John decides to be nice to the kids a little bit more and want to protect them, because this one girl is able to draw a picture of his dog that we don't even see if he has any other photos of the thing for her to know what the dog even looks like. Oh, your whole moments in this movie where I'm like, what is actually happening right now? It's like, why is this way? Why is this happening? Instead, the movie's like, I'm too stupid to know how to do it, so I'm just going to keep being stupid. Oh, fuck. Oh. But, yeah, we have to... But the actual major scene right after that, we see these four gangsters are talking to each other, and they're just laying out expletives, and they're talking to this one madame who has four whores, I guess, and they're all like very obviously not wanting to be whores or prostitutes. I should actually say it's not like they choose like, I want to be a whore, put it in me. But brains addled as you could tell. But whenever that is happening, it's like, okay, that's not how that would make fuck you, movie. Like, not only have we seen films do that kind of a story and that kind of an idea better, and not only have they done, they've also done it much more true. Because what is the big thing that they do? They purposely get them addicted to drugs. So that way they're constantly just constantly languid, and they just pump them full of drugs and keep having people come in and fuck them. It's horrible. But on top of that, you have at least two women who are kind of in. Like, I get the madame pretty much, who's pretty much over them. That I get, but then there's this other female gangster who's kind of just fine with it, I guess. It's like, what? No. It's like, that doesn't really fit. And not only that, but she seems to be very... We never get a lot about her, beyond her name, which is Savage. Because everybody's got to have these stupid names. But the whole scene between them, just sitting there chit-chatting about all the new bitches they got and all this other shit, goes on for 10 fucking minutes. That may not seem long. This is an hour and a half long. That is 13% of your film is devoted. Wait, am I right? No, it's a little less than 10% of your film is devoted to one scene that doesn't progress anything, because all the characters short of Savage die, and also one of the soon-to-be prostitute ladies who actually ended up killing this one dude because she wasn't going to put up with it, which I don't blame her. It's like he was just going to rape her, and it's like you're not supposed to. No, not trying to be that guy to try and tell a criminal how to run his evil enterprise, but yeah, you don't mess with the merchandise. Because one, how do you know they're clean? Two, you're supposed to keep them pumped full of drugs for the customers, not for you. Because you keep them for you, that is actually how you can get yourself sick, or you can end up getting stabbed. Because why wouldn't they want to go, hey, look, he's wanting to do something, right into the penis. She's going to grab my nails and I'll just let him bleed to death while his wiener hangs half off, if not completely off. Come on, people, let's use our brains here. But the whole scene is really only to set up the two brothers rescuing the female lead, who her name is Berta. Yeah, I was supposed to call it Berta, but it's like, I think it's actually spelled B-R-E-T-A, but they keep pronouncing Berta. I'm like, well, wouldn't that have the E and R switch? But not gonna get into it. But yeah, it's scenes like that consistently happen. Like, we have to have characters just talking about stuff that doesn't push forward the plot. Or it's like, oh, I'm going to give some kind of characterization to these characters who are about to fucking die. It's like, why do I give two shits? These characters aren't funny. They're not interesting. And only that, but I don't know how they pertain to the main plot. Oh, wait, they don't pertain to the main plot. Why is this even here? And constantly, that's what the movie does. We gotta have this random bullshit, which you don't care about, because it doesn't pertain to anything. It doesn't pertain to main characters, it doesn't pertain to antagonists, it doesn't pertain to the two Honduras kids. They keep calling them kids, but both of them are over 20 years old. It's really weird. And it's like, guys, I'm not even that old yet. But fuck, is it just lame the entire time. And that's a problem. It's like, the movie has a style to it. It actually has, it's like, oh, we want to do this. And I know I usually am willing to look beyond a film when it has some style well over its substance at times, especially with films like, oh fuck, what is it called? I put it in my top 10 best of from last year. Or no, the year before. Oh, hell, I can't remember its name now. But I've put plenty of films that I really like, even though I think they have a lot more style than they actually do substance. But I think there is still enough of a substance within those that actually gives you something to latch onto. Here, it is a basic premise. It's like, okay, well, then you're going to have a lot of style with it, right? You're going to have a lot of interesting stylistic choices. Okay, cool, there is some stylistic choices. But it doesn't pertain to anything except for how it's shot. It doesn't have anything to do with the actual film itself. Like, sure, some of these like kind of cuts and how certain things are done, it almost makes it like a horror western, which sounds kind of dumb, but it could be an interesting idea. It's like, okay, well, that's a neat idea, but constantly, and what's the shift between this whole idea? It's like, is it horror film? Is it western? What sensibility do I want to use at this time? It kind of picks and chooses what it thinks is going to be the best idea, and a lot of times it just ends up being lame time. And also, it's like, I would be willing to like this if this was a lot more like a Dolomite film. Like, everything was so god awful bad that it's actually kind of endearing. But the problem is, obviously, the director and obviously the writer really thought they were saying something unique and they thought they were doing something cool. They thought they were saying or giving a very interesting story. The cinematographer, everybody thought they were doing something cool. And they are doing something so godforsakenly lame. It's actually kind of almost endearing in how just lame the entire thing is. Sorry, my phone went off. And just like how kind of inept it kind of gets at times. Partial because, again, first time director. But in the same instance, it's when he's like, somebody should have been like, hey, this really shouldn't be this way. Or, hey, how about we add some context to any of this? How about we give a reason why people should be watching this? Anybody got a rat's ass why this scene needs to be in here? Maybe we can just cut it. Oh, the movie's going to be too short? Then maybe we shouldn't make a movie. Fucking movie. Ugh. To give this an actual score... Oh, The Terminal. That's the name of the movie that I was thinking of. That was very substance over style. Or style over substance. I'm random, folks. But to give this like an actual score, to say whether or not this is worth watching, I had to say no. It's not bad enough to be a bad, fun flick. It's nowhere near good enough, obviously, to be worth your time. Instead, I think a lot of people are going to be like me, really bored with it. It's a not very interesting film. I mean, there was one thing, I was kind of reading through some like IMDb reviews because that's always the best idea to do. And there are some I believe are done by the cast, obviously, because there's like, people just don't like it because they just don't get it. Now there's plenty to get. It's like the movie's not deep. It's not subtle as hell. It's very in your face. It's very much what it says it is. But it forgets one word that it should include. Dull. It's surprisingly dull. I haven't seen many Terry Crews movies that are this aggressively just bland. Like, beyond some of the stylistic choices, the movie is just run of the mill. You could find this anywhere. You could find it on Netflix without having to watch this film. And that's the biggest problem with it. Is like, there's nothing to latch onto this movie. The style is not that unique that you can't see it in other films. That you can't see it in better films. It's partially homage and partially just ripping off shit very non-subtly. I mean, there's times I've seen this in movies like fucking Axum or goddamn Django Unchained and other movies. Not to compare those two, because they are wildly different spectrums in my book. But this is just such a horrible sit. Like, I've been watching many movies, obviously very bad movies, throughout this past few months. And I haven't had to sit through a movie that is just so aggressively bland as this. I mean, I've watched some bad movies that thought they were saying something and ended up they didn't know how to even say the. But this is a movie that really believes it's saying something. It's like, you know what? Gang violence, bad. Thanks. I fucking got it. And that's just the gist of the entire film. I can sum it up in that one sentence. Gang violence is bad. Don't be a douche. That's something that I think we can say easily and not have to have an hour and a half long bunch of circle jerking. Hell, it's not even circle jerking. It's just two dudes jerking their dicks off on each other. It's fucking miss it. If you want an actual score, I mean, it's a 3.27. I can't keep giving movies these kind of scores, but it is a 1. And it's not a 1 because I just feel like just dunking on more bad movies. I want all the worst movies ever. But because it is just an unfun sit. Like, Dolomite is a 1. But Dolomite is watchable as hell. Like, I could watch Dolomite right now. I could watch it 12 times in a row and enjoy the hell out of myself. I can watch Batman and Robin for weeks on end. Battlefield Earth, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, even Bloodshot I could watch again. Bloodshot was an infinitely watchable turd. But that's the thing. I at least admit they're turds, but they're at least rewatchable. Sure, they suck ass, but come on. I can at least sit there and go, haha, that's terrible. This is just one of those terrible where it's like, okay, y'all don't know what you're doing as well as you really think you do. And on top of everything, you're just not as deep as you think you are. I would say you're as shallow as a puddle, but to be fair, you're as shallow as somebody pissing on the ground. There's just so little depth to the entire thing, and it really, really fucking thinks it has a lot more depth than it does. It's not a fun time. There's a reason this has been so lambasted. And it's just bad to sit through. And it's sad, because Terry Crews, I know, he could elevate even the worst movies. Like, he can elevate better or worse movies to actually be watchable. Instead, here, he's told to be so subdued and so, like, serious. And that's another thing. The movie takes itself way too fucking seriously. That is the biggest issue that all these people who want to sit there and try to say, well, maybe these are going to be bad, good movies. Like, no. Bad, good movies are watchable because the people who are working on obviously don't care. They don't give two flying turds about the entire flick. So they're like, look it, I'm just going to do whatever sounds fun. And usually they do. And it at least makes for an interesting film. It doesn't always make for a good one, but it makes it damn well interesting. There's none of that. Everybody wants to take this somewhat seriously, and because we have such an inexperienced crew behind the camera, you can't elevate actors who I know are capable better. Except Ludacris. No offense. Ludacris hasn't done anything that's been worth a shit. Beyond some of his early musical career, everything from Ludacris has been fucking terrible. And yes, I include Justin Bieber with that at later on part about being terrible. Oh, fuck this. And I can't believe we still got till July till we're going to actually have movies in theater. And the first one's going to be a Christopher Nolan film. Not because I'm so looking forward to Tenet. I am somewhat hopeful for Tenet. But Christopher Nolan has been so hit or miss. Like, Dunkirk was just aggressively dull throughout. Like, more I've watched the movie, more I'm bored with it. Interstellar, I still can't make heads or tails out of the damn flick. I get what's going on, but at the same time, it's like one of those, like, there is a lot aggressively bad about it. The science of the film really kind of just beats me over the head with its own stupid at times. it's got good acting, but none of it's great acting. A lot of it's ranges from good to what the fuck are you doing, Matt Damon? And then, of course, I cannot forget the one that people love filleting the shit out of, The Prestige, because fuck that movie. God, that movie is so terrible, and I could see the fucking twist coming a mile away. If you didn't see the twist coming in Prestige, then dear God, I want to just see the world from your tunneled vision look. It's got to be magical. Just... And not only that, but the end of the entire Dark Knight trilogy, it was such a letdown. Nobody can attest that that was a good film. There was so much aggressively bad about it. So, yay. I don't know what I'm watching next week. It's going to be some... I'm actually thinking about watching a few movies, and I might give you my review on it. I just need to see if they're still available. One of them is a Nick Cage film that's supposed to be based on a, H.P. Lovecraft story. I'm actually really interested in that. Not because I'm a huge H.P. Lovecraft fan, but I really like Nick Cage. So I watch it. And then the other one is this like Russian-based steampunk film. I am so into steampunk. I'm like, hey, it's probably going to be terrible. It looks kind of cheap, but I'm going to watch it. I'm pretty sure it's going to be bad, but I've watched a lot worse this year so far, so it can't hurt me more than everything else already has. So, we'll see how it goes. But hey, until then, I'll see you all later, so bye-bye, everybody.